Good morning, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. I'm Ty Glenn. Hopefully you guys are having a great day. Before we go ahead and get started, make sure that you guys follow the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, iHeartRadio, and subscribe to the YouTube channel. I looked at my analytics on the Hockey Talk TG Podcast YouTube channel, and I noticed that 16% of you are not subscribed. So you want to make sure that you're subscribed to the Hockey Talk with TG Podcast. As for the audio listeners, I noticed that a few of you guys, or at least like a few percentage of you guys, are not following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. So you want to make sure that you're following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast so you can stay up to date on the latest NHL news, teams, players, stats, and other good content I bring on the podcast. We're with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. This is your number one podcast for all things hockey. And you want to make sure that you stay up to date on the latest NHL news that's going around the league. Also, make sure you get your copies of my book, Rising Up, A Young Player's Journey to the NHL, and Slapshot shows the story of our middle school hockey team. Those two books are out on Amazon. You want to make sure you get your copy of them today. And I'm currently working on another hockey book to write for you guys, so stay tuned for that. And in this episode, we're going to be talking about will Bedard, Macklin Celebrini be the next NHL rivalry? Where did the Bruins go with trading Brad Marchand? All the good stuff on the Hockey Talk on this episode of Hockey Talk TG podcast. So make sure that you stay tuned into this episode till the end. But without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get started. So like I mentioned, will Bedard and Macklin Celebrini be the next rivalry in the NHL? Will it be just like the Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin rivalry in the NHL? So last Thursday on March 13th, Macklin Celebrini of the San Jose Sharks and Bedard of the Chicago Blackhawks faced off for the first time in the NHL. Of course, that was the Sharks' 4-2 win against the Blackhawks. So Macklin Celebrini took game one of the Celebrini and Bedard matchup. Of course, Macklin Celebrini missed the first two meets between the Blackhawks and Sharks this season because he was injured. So he got to play against Bedard and the Chicago Blackhawks in the last game or last meeting of the season between the two teams. And it was a good one, despite Bedard getting a 10-minute game as for, whatever he said to Chris Rooney, and also the Blackhawks losing. That was another bad part, because you listen to the podcast and you see my content on Fanside's Blackhawk Up page, you would know that I am a Chicago Blackhawks fan. And both Macklin Celebrini and Bedard, they're both from in Vancouver, which, since both of them know each other pretty well, both of them are from Vancouver. That's, kind of what makes this possible rivalry exciting to watch. And some comparison between for the Sidney Crosby and also Ovechkin rivalry. Both teams will be the star players for their team, and they will win Stanley Cups in the near future. Of course, one of our contributors for Blackhawk Up, he did do an article about this. I think his name's Todd. He did an article about this on Blackhawk Up. I'll put his article link in the description about the Macklin Celebrini and Bedard rivalry being the next rivalry in the NHL for you guys to take a look at. But I am very excited for these two players, even though that Bedard is having a tough season. A lot of people are, comparing the Bedard and Celebrini possible rivalry to the Crosby and Ovechkin rivalry, and rightfully so, because I believe it could mirror the Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin rivalry. I mean, despite the Blackhawks and Sharks not playing in the same division, of course, the Blackhawks play in the Central Division, the Sharks play in the Pacific Division. Despite that, I still believe it can be a great rivalry. And also not just the fans, comparing this to the rivalry, but the media itself shapes it to be the rivalry. So in one of my sports media classes, because I am a journalism sports media major, if you did not know this, we talked about framing and social identity theory. And so the media and what framing is how the media shapes the stuff. And so the media shapes the celebrating Bedard possible rivalry to be like the Alex Ovechkin and Sidney Crosby rivalry. So you don't just have fans thinking about it, but you also had the media thinking about it as well. And with both players entering the prime of their career, this foundation is set for a rivalry that could define this next era of the NHL, kind of like the Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin rivalry. And that rivalry between Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin has been going on for 20 plus years now. And the first time they faced off was, I think, in November of 2005. I think that's also when Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin first made the NHL debut, because Sidney Crosby was drafted in 2005 NHL draft, Alex Ovechkin in 2004, and I think Ovi didn't make his NHL debut into the 2005-2006 NHL season, I believe. So, but the first time they did face off was in November of 2005. Like I said, I don't think Ovi's debut was 2005-2006 NHL season, because during the 2004-2005 NHL season, well, actually there was no 2004-2005 NHL season because it was a lockout that year, and so the NHL didn't have a 2004-2005 season because of the lockout. So we got to see Ovi make his NHL debut in the 2005-2006 season. Same with Sidney Crosby, and the rivalry started in November 2005. So that's where it all started, and certainly lived up to the hype. One thing I do remember about that Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin rivalry, or at least one thing that's one favorite part about that rivalry, is Game 2 of the 2009 Stanley Cup playoffs, where both Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin had a hat trick in that game. I believe the Capitals won Game 2, but the Penguins ended up winning that series because they went on to win the Stanley Cup in 2009, and Sidney Crosby became the youngest captain that at the time to win the Stanley Cup. But let me know what you guys think about the Bedard and Celebrini rivalry. I know I said a lot about the Sidney Crosby and Alex Ovechkin rivalry, but that's because I was trying to compare it to what could be the next rivalry in the NHL between Connor Bedard and Michael Celebrini. So I know I said a lot about that than I did about Bedard and Celebrini, but that's because I was trying to compare it to it and, see how the Bedard and Celebrini can match up to that rivalry despite the Blackhawks and the Sharks not playing in the same division. Do you guys think that this could be the next rivalry in the NHL? Let me know down in the comments below on Spotify and YouTube. I don't think you can comment down on Apple Podcasts or iHeartRadio. So if you're listening to this on Spotify, or you can just head over to the YouTube channel and comment down below. All right, now we're going to talk about where do the Boston Bruins go from here. So if you guys didn't know, at the NHL trade deadline, the Boston Bruins traded their captain and longtime player Brad Marchand to the Florida Panthers in exchange for a conditional 2027 second-round draft pick, which could be a first-round draft pick if certain conditions are met, according to one article that I read. And the Bruins retain half of Brad Marchand's salary as part of the trade agreement. And of course, it's the end of an era in Boston. I mean, Brad Marchand's trade to the Panthers, it signified the end of an era for the Boston Bruins. So the Bruins were sellers at the deadline. Not only did they trade away Brad Marchand, they traded away Brandon Carlo, Charlie Coyle, Trent Frederick away. So I don't know where General Manager Don Sweeting wants to do with the Boston Bruins from here. If you guys did not watch the latest Behind the Beat episode on YouTube, it was actually a clip of, everybody reacting. I think the front office for the Boston Bruins reacting to the trade for Brad Marchand. You want to go ahead and check out that clip, or check out that episode on YouTube. It's Behind the Beat. It's the Boston Bruins documentary, and they had an episode about that on YouTube. So if you haven't seen it, you want to go ahead and check that out. But obviously, like I said, if you're asking me, I don't know where the Bruins go from here because the Bruins are without Brad Marchand, obviously, Patrice Bergeron because he's retired, David Krejci because he's retired, Zdeno Chara retired, and those were the same guys that, won the 2011 Stanley Cup. That was at the time when the Bruins were a good hockey team, but now they're not a good hockey team. I mean, they're still in the playoff mix, but after trading away Brad Marchand, I don't see this team making the playoffs. Like, I really don't, if I'm, being honest with you. And, of course, Brad Marchand, he played 16 years with the Boston Bruins, and he had 976 points in 1,090 games played. So 422 goals, 554 assists for 976 points and 1,090 games played with the Bruins. He's also a two-time NHL All-Star, playing in 2017 and 2018 NHL All-Star game. And another reason why the Bruins, traded away Brad Marchand is because of unsuccessful contract extensions. So, and also there's rumors about, Brad Marchand being possibly traded, mostly because of his contract. And I think he's going to be an unrestricted free agent at the end of this season. I think his contract deal is set to expire after this season. So I don't know if the Bruins are going to sign Brad Marchand back. They probably won't. I hate to break it to you. If you're a Boston Bruins fan, I don't think they sign Brad Marchand back if he does be an unrestricted free agent. But yeah, it is certainly the new era in Boston. And of course, I don't know why the Bruins would trade away Brad Marchand to the team that beat them in back-to-back years in the playoffs and what could be a new rivalry team in the Florida Panthers. But I know in one of my episodes of the Hockey Talk TG podcast, I did talk about the potential line of Brad Marchand, Sam Bennett, and Matthew Tkachuk, and I compared it to the Hanson brothers from Slapshot, and I also compared it to the Bash brothers on Mighty Ducks. So, gritty physical line between Brad Marchand, Sam Bennett, and Matthew Tkachuk. But obviously, Don Sweeney, he's working up something new. I don't know what the Bruins do, but, that kind of leads me into my next topic, who will be the next Bruins captain. So, I think it's either going to be David Pastrnak or Charlie McAvoy. I mean, those are my two choices of who could be the next Bruins captain. David Pastrnak, currently 28 years old. He'll turn 29 in May. And David Pastrnak has served as an alternate captain for the Boston Bruins before and is considered a leading candidate for being team captain. And in his 11th season with the Boston Bruins, David Pastrnak has been a consistent offensive force, and he's contributed significantly to the team's success, but I don't know how much of an impact he's going to make now with the Bruins trading away some of their top players and, some of their solid players. Another candidate I believe could be team captain of the Boston Bruins is Charlie McAvoy. He's known for his defensive prowess and leadership quality skills, and like David Pastrnak, Charlie McAvoy has also served as an alternate captain for the Boston Bruins. But Charlie McAvoy is currently sidelined due to a upper body injury. Of course, as you guys did not see, he did not play the last few games for Team USA during the Four Nations. He did not play in the championship game for Team USA in the Four Nations against Canada because he was injured. But he was, if you guys took a look at the Four Nations Unveiled episode on the NHL YouTube channel, they did release an episode of that on March the 2nd, and Charlie McAvoy was hyping. He had like a little arm cast around his arm because he was injured, and he was, trying to hype the team up. He was a little bit emotional as well in that clip, but he was still trying to hype the team up. But I believe it's either going to be David Pastrnak or Charlie McAvoy that beats the next Boston Bruins captain. And the Bruins, they don't play today. They played Monday, and they were coming off of a 3-2 overtime loss to the Buffalo Sabres on Monday. I believe they had to lead twice in that game, or at least once, and they blew the lead and then lost in overtime. The next game is tomorrow against the Vegas Golden Knights, which is the start of a 5-game road trip for the Boston Bruins. And they're going to be playing the Golden Knights, the Sharks, the Kings, the Ducks, and the Red Wings. And like I said, I know the Bruins are still in a playoff mix, but I don't see the Bruins making the playoffs. They're 30-9 this season, so they're right at 500. It's going to be a tough season overall for the Boston Bruins. But, yeah, I don't see this team being a playoff team because they trade away some of their top player and some of their solid players. And it's just obviously bad times if you're a Boston Bruins fan. But let me know what you guys think on where do the Boston Bruins go from here. And who do you think, where's the seed next for the Boston Bruins? I mean, obviously, I know most of you probably agree with me about David Pastrnak and Charlie McAvoy being the next team captain and why they should be the next team captain. But let me know what you guys think. Where do the Boston Bruins go from here? What does General Manager Don Sweeney do? And also, who will be the next Bruins captain? Just let me know down in the comments below on Spotify and YouTube. Okay, so now we're going to I talked about this on Monday's episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, but since I wrote an article about it on Blackhawk Up, I might as well bring it up for discussion. Should the Blackhawks bring back Patrick Kane to be team captain and help out Connor Bedard? And not just Connor Bedard, but the rest of the team, because they certainly do need it. The Blackhawks, they played yesterday against the Seattle Kraken, and they lost 6-2. And one of the things that I had noticed from the Chicago Blackhawks is lack of defense and turning the puck over. I heard Charlie Mamoliolis and Troy Murray talk about in the Blackhawks WGN radio show post-game, and they said turnovers was a big issue in the Blackhawks game against the Kraken yesterday, and they have now lost 5 straight games. Like I said, I'm surprised. I said this off air. I'm surprised we're not last in the league right now because we are 4 points ahead of the San Jose Sharks in the standings, and we're not last in the league. That is a surprise. The Sharks, you take a look at the Sharks and the Blackhawks. The Sharks are pretty much the better team than the Chicago Blackhawks. Not only did they beat them in the season series, but also overall. I mean, the Sharks I've been watching the Sharks. I've been watching Mackin celebrating Will Smith and some of the other players on the Sharks. And they have been playing, despite being the worst team, they have been playing some solid, good hockey, something that the Blackhawks have not done, unfortunately. And so they need a captain who knows how to win, who knows what it's like to struggle when you first come and struggle in a rebuild, but has worked his way up to the top. And that is Patrick Kane. So, like I said, I talked about this on Monday's episode of the Hockey Talk TG podcast. I also wrote an article about it on Fanside's Blackhawk Up page. So, after this episode, make sure you go take a look at that article. I will put the article in the description so you guys can take a look at it from there. But taking a look at Patrick Kane's $4 million contract, it is set to expire after this season, and he will be an unrestricted free agent when this season is over with. And of course, Patrick Kane's experience as a 3-time Stanley Cup champion and former first overall pick will help and mentor Connor Bedard's early career challenges. Connor Bedard did have a goal last night on the power play, which coming into that game, according to Charlie Mamoliolis, the Blackhawks were 0 for 12 on the power play coming into the Blackhawks game yesterday against the Krakens. And Connor Bedard did score a goal on the power play with the assist from Artyom Leshchnov, which I will get into how he's been doing in his first 4 games with the Blackhawks in just a second. But I believe Connor Bedard just needs that veteran guidance from Patrick Kane. And not just Bedard, but the team in general. So I heard Alex Vlasic mention in the post game how the losses were just becoming, very challenging, and rightfully so. Like I said, I had expectations that I knew the Blackhawks weren't going to be a playoff team heading into this year, obviously, because they're still in the rebuild. But like I said on Monday's episode of the Hockey Talk 2G podcast, the excuses were saying that we're a rebuild team is over with. But I knew they weren't going to be a playoff team heading into the season, but I expected them to be a solid team overall. And after the trade away Seth Jones to Spencer Knight, I even expected them to be a solid team heading into next season. And, obviously that's not been the case. And I know Blackhawks fans hate to hear it. But Seth Jones was right about the team. They have been the same team since game one. They haven't made any strides. They haven't gotten better, and it's just frustrating. I mean, I know Blackhawks fans hate to hear it, but you got to admit that Seth Jones was right about the Blackhawks. And even I heard the CHGO Blackhawks post-game. I even heard on the CHGO Blackhawks podcast that Jay and Mario mentioned the same thing as I'm mentioning right now to you guys. Seth Jones was right about the team. And so I also mentioned this off air that the Blackhawks need to go out and find a coach who is more assertive and aggressive and physical and, hard on the team. Because the Blackhawks need that type of coach. They need the coach with the winning mentality. They need a coach who's assertive, who's aggressive, who's not afraid to, challenge calls. Because in the Blackhawks game against the Kraken yesterday, it should have been a 3-1 game in the second period. Because Nick Foligno, the Blackhawks and the Kraken were jamming the puck at the crease. Joey Decor was all in the mix. And Nick Foligno told the referee that the puck went in. And so I looked at it from the overhead view, and I actually did see the puck cross the line. The Blackhawks didn't challenge it and say that the puck went in before the referee blew the whistle. They didn't challenge it. If I was Andy Sorsen, I would have challenged it because if Nick Foligno was saying it went in, 9 times out of 10, I would believe the captain. I would believe the captain saying that the puck went in, it went in. Blackhawks did not challenge it, but that's what I would have done if I was Andy Sorsen. And that just comes to my point. That proves my point. The Blackhawks need an assertive, aggressive coach who's not afraid to challenge it or, to get gritty, not greedy, but gritty with the team and, be hard on the team. Take a look at what Coach John Tortorella is doing, Matvei Michikov in Philadelphia and for the Flyers in general. I mean, sometimes if you guys did not see his post-game interviews and conferences, he doesn't hold back of what he says. And I think that's the kind of coach that the Blackhawks need, but not to say, publicly out loud to the reporters and stuff, but to say that stuff to the team in general, not to reporters. And so I think the Blackhawks need that kind of coach who knows how to win. The Blackhawks need a captain who knows how it is when you struggle at first in the rebuild and then works your way up to the top. And I believe that is Patrick Kane. I believe he can be that captain to help out the Chicago Blackhawks. But let me know what you guys think down in the comments. I saw some comments on Twitter when Blackhawk Up posted my article on Twitter. I saw some people saying that the Blackhawks were not going to bring him back. And, I know that. I mentioned that they weren't going to bring him back in my article on Blackhawk Up. They, obviously didn't read my article on Blackhawk Up. I know that they say they weren't going to bring him back. But they should reconsider their decision. That's also what I said on Blackhawk Up. So I will put that link down in the description on YouTube and on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and iHeartRadio for you guys to go ahead and check it out and read. And let me know your thoughts down in the comments down below. Obviously, like I said, I have gotten 3 comments on Twitter when my article about that was posted on Twitter. Should the Blackhawks bring back Patrick Kane to mentor Connor Bedard for that veteran kindness? And like I said, not just for Connor Bedard, but, for the team in general. Should they bring him back? I got 3 comments on Twitter, and one of them was saying no, they're not going to bring him back. And then another person agreed with me, and then the other person agreed with me. So it's just kind of like a mixed conversation. So that's why I always like to hear you guys' thoughts on that. So let me know down in the comments if you think the Blackhawks should bring back Patrick Kane. I think they should, not because for all the reasons I said on this show. Not because of all the reasons I said on this episode and on Monday's episode and in my article, but just in general, do you think they should bring them back? But moving on from that topic, we're going to be talking about Artem Lechnesov's performance. So Artem Lechnesov, despite the Blackhawks struggles, he has been looking good for the Blackhawks of late. In his first game against the Colorado Avalanche, Artem Lechnesov was on the 3rd defensive pairing, and he logged significant ice time And he had like nearly 21 minutes of ice time in his NHL debut against the Colorado Avalanche, despite the Blackhawks getting shut out 3-0. And what a game from Scott Wedgwood that was. I mean, he made some unbelievable saves, going old school Dominic Hasek in that game as well. He made a good save on Connor Bedard, and then he denied Nick Foligno with an unreal stop in that game. So what a game from Scott Wedgwood. I think he made 19, 21 saves in that game for the shutout win. And Artem Lechesnov, like I said, he looked good in his first NHL game. And in his third game, which I believe was against Vancouver, it was against Vancouver, he was leading the team's defense in ice time. So he really stood out for the team in his third game against the Vancouver Canucks. He also notched his first NHL point against the Canucks with an assist on Wyatt Kaiser's goal in that game. And he had a great assist on Connor Bedard's power play goal in yesterday's loss to the Seattle Kraken, which he has back-to-back 6-2 blowout losses for the Chicago Blackhawks. Come on now. I mean, that second period, the Kraken took over in that second period in that game for the Blackhawks. They scored 5 unanswered goals in that second period, and then they added another goal in the third period. So the Kraken, after the Blackhawks scored the first 2 goals from Connor Bedard, Tyler Bertuzzi, P.S. Tyler Bertuzzi ending a long 20-game goalless drought in that game, the Kraken took over the rest of the game. So, I mean, the Blackhawks got to do better with that and maintain the lead and being consistent and defending well. Please, for the love of God, please get some defense. That's, all I'm asking for. And for somebody just to help out Connor Bedard. But going back to Artem Lechesnov, he's had a solid first 4 games with the Blackhawks overall. And he has been effectively contributing to the power play unit, showcasing his offensive skills from the blue line. And we talked about before, and I also talked about in my article, how Artem Lechesnov is a two-way defenseman. And he certainly shows his offensive skills on the Blackhawks power play unit. So he's been really good on the power play in these first 4 games. And, I think that's going to be a big factor in the future of how he'll contribute effectively on the power play. And, I believe most of his points in his career will probably be on the power play just because of, what I'm seeing from now from Artem Lechesnov. He's known for his physical presence as well on the blue line, which is something that the Blackhawks need. The Blackhawks actually have a lot of defensemen who are like those big guys on the blue line, but they're not showing that physical effort. I mean, you got Alex Vlasic, you got Wyatt Kaiser, Louis Crevier, Artem Lechesnov. So they got some big physical defensemen, but they don't show it. They don't play that aggressive style of hockey in these Blackhawks games. So, but despite the Blackhawks struggles, Artem Lechesnov has been a positive factor for the Blackhawks, though. But let me know what you guys think about Artem Lechesnov's performance down in the comments below. I always, like to hear from you guys, whether you agree or disagree with anything that I say on the podcast. I always like to hear from you, and just for audience engagement. I mean, I would try and respond the best way I can to you guys' comments, but just let me know any hockey news that that I bring on the podcast that you might agree or disagree with. Just let me know down in the comments below. All right, NHL games on the slate for today. So there's only 2 NHL games on the slate for today. Both of them will be on TNT. First off, starting with the Colorado Avalanche taking on the Toronto Maple Leafs at 6 o'clock p.m. Central Time. McKinnon versus Matthews should be a good one. Like I said, it will air on TNT, True TV, and HBO Max. Last meeting of the season between the 2 teams. The Avalanche won 7-4 at Ball Arena. And then the game following that on TNT will be the Seattle Kraken and Minnesota Wild at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. Of course, the Kraken won 6-2 yesterday against the Blackhawks, unfortunately. And they're going to be looking to win this game against the Minnesota Wild for a back-to-back set. They'll head to Alberta to play the Oilers on Saturday, I believe. And then they play the Flames to wrap up their 4-game road trip. Last meeting of the season between the Kraken and the Wild. The road team has won the previous 2 meets. Seattle won 5-4 in the shootout in St. Paul on October 12th. And the Wild won 4-3 in regulation in Seattle on March the 4th. So the road teams have been dominant in these season series. Will that be the same for today? We'll just have to see when that game comes on at 8:30 p.m. Central Time. All right, guys, that is going to do it for this episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Thank you guys for tuning in as always. Really do appreciate it. Like I said, make sure that you're following the Hockey Talk with TG podcast on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and iHeartRadio. Make sure you are subscribed to the YouTube channel. Like I said at the start of the podcast, 16% of you are not subscribed to the YouTube channel. I want to make sure that you do that. And also, there's like a few percentage of you guys that listen to the audio. You guys are not following the Hockey Talk TG podcast. If you want to stay up to date on the latest NHL news that happens, this is your #1 podcast for it. So I truly recommend that you follow the Hockey Talk with TG podcast, bringing the best hockey content than anybody else would on the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. You want to make sure that you're following this podcast. We're with you every Monday, Wednesday, and Friday from 11:30 a.m. to noon Central Time, 12:30 p.m. to 1 p.m. Eastern Time. So you want to make sure that you stay up to date on that. But nonetheless, hopefully you guys have a great rest of your day. God first, as always. Be blessed. I will see you guys Friday for another episode of the Hockey Talk with TG podcast. Take care.